Hey everyone, welcome to Latin Entertainment as you present Support Latine Businesses, the show, where we interview various businesses across Abya. Also, if you haven't, please join the Facebook group Support Latine Businesses on facebook.com/group/Support Latine Businesses, where you can network with a wide range of people in the pursuit of cooperative economics. Now let's get into this episode. We're interviewing Esperanza from Brewja Co.
So my name is Esperanza. I am the owner of Brewja Co. Brewja Co. is essentially the idea of the ni de aquí ni de allá. So from neither here nor there. And that is, you know, going further into inspiring people to reclaim their narrative and explore themselves through coffee and art. So something that I like to combine are the arts and coffee because I do believe that arts are fundamentally human, and that there are ways to move that into our everyday lives. And so coffee, I'm also a roaster, and so I combine it with that because I want to reimagine what a coffee shop looks like as an art space. So I do believe that coffee and chisme is like makes the world go round, and it's the premise of all these three things is the premise of community.
And so would you mind elaborating on that as in what do you see coffee shops like today or in previous years, and then where would you like to see coffee shops in the future?
So I visit coffee shops like no other. So one of like my side passions that I do on my free time is I actually go visit coffee shops pretty frequently. Before I almost went every day when I was in the city of Chicago. So I, I would go exploring and look for different coffee shops. Generally speaking, I would see mostly like you get your coffee and then you leave. That's pretty much all you do. Like you don't really stick around. You don't really talk to other people. You don't really do much. And I do think that we can make it a little bit better, of making spaces that can be a collaborative environment. Because historically, speaking, because I'm also like a music educator and study music history, a lot of like these famous pieces or famous works were like people collaborated at the coffee shop. Usually there'd be piano or something along the lines, and writers, musicians, artists would all come together and critique their each other's work. So it kind of became like a lost art form of that, just collaboration within these spaces. And so now that it's more of like, it's just a place to get your juice or get your fix, so you can continue on with the rest of your busy day, or it's a place to work, which I do think there is value in it. Thing that I'd like to see is to have something that can create like events, for example, that people can attend and meet other people and collaborate. So generally speaking, you know, I see that more often than not, as well as like I'm starting to see people try to incorporate, but it's really passively incorporating the arts. So they'll have like a local artist on, there, but they're not really taking care of the work. They're not really like advertising it that it's for sale. And that's something that I want to really focus on is the aspect of like, yes, I don't have to convince you to drink your coffee because I know my coffee's good. And that's, like coffee's coffee and people are going to buy coffee or they're not. But artwork is a different story.
Yeah, what has influenced your artwork? I see all these pieces, from the moon to Frida Kahlo, Spooky Queen. What has
Yeah.
influenced you in all these artworks?
So my inspiration primarily just like is derived from my own experiences of growing up with spirituality and just kind of trying to find my own identity. And that's why Brewja Co is like is the premise of like finding our own identity because I do think that art is for healing. It is for self exploration in a society that doesn't necessarily encourage that. And so I do think that my artwork, even before I could even say all this, was my own therapy of trying to navigate, you know, the school system and navigating just the world as a Latina woman. And getting through, for us like in the south side of Chicago, underserved population. So for me, it's deeply personal. And I think it really, and I think this is true for every artist, it encapsulates like different parts of ourselves. And so my artwork has kind of that mixture of self introspection and, whimsy.
Yeah. Yeah, I really like this quote that I see from you. All my art is a representation of myself, but when I'm at my lowest, I paint myself to disrupt that sadness. It is difficult. I see a stranger, a beautiful stranger. Would you mind elaborating on that?
Yeah, so this is something that I have been working on, like, I guess, like wording it and like being able to describe this experience because I think for a very long time I was just painting myself um and people would ask like, why do you do this, like, and I'm just like, kind of nervous on like trying to say what it really is. But for me, art has always served as a disruptor of reality. And so the idea of the ni de aquí ni de allá goes beyond our identity. It also goes beyond, like, how we engage in escapism and reality. And so for me, art is the middle ground of like processing those feelings of reality, but also for a moment being able to like remove myself from that. For me, like, growing up, and for a lot of women, um, we, you know, we grow up knowing diet culture like the back of our hand, and it goes beyond that, like beauty standards and all that stuff. Um, so having to navigate those feelings of like, I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough, nobody will ever like me because X, Y, and Z. Um, I paint myself because at some point, like dealing with eating disorders and, body dysmorphia, I can't really see who's in the mirror anymore. And so if I go to my, artistic skills of like, okay, I'm going to draw what I see, not what I know, because in that moment, it feels like that is what I know. Like, this is somebody I don't know. Like, this is somebody that is, grotesque. And so what I do is I paint myself as I see myself in that moment to to really start seeing who I am. And that's when I start seeing the beauty, because it's like my artwork, it's very colorful and bright, even despite like the different um, emotions that are evoked in them. So when I see it, it's like, yeah, I see the sad person on occasion, but I don't see that grotesque figure that I see in the mirror. I see her as her, not as, like my mind trying to confuse me.
And so, what events have led you to even create this business?
Oh, there's a lot. I mean, I think like Brewja Co, like I said, encompasses so many different things that, um, it starts off with the artwork that I've been doing since I was little. I think I started doing it around when I was like 2 or 3. And I never really stopped. I did it at school, I did it at home, whenever I was bored, whenever I was visiting somewhere else, like I always did art. And so that was just kind of a given, despite people telling me that like artists don't make money until they die. So like for a second, I like strayed away from it because, that being kind of like the messaging that I was getting.
Yeah.
Um, like I strayed away from it, but I came back to it because I was like, no, I'm gonna find a way to make this work. I'm gonna find a way to, like combine all my loves. Later on, I picked up music, and so started getting into the music scene and really starting to kind of envision this world that I wanted to create. And then, once university hit, you know, my mom bought me this coffee maker and I got like the Starbucks Verona blend and I never had touched it before until like it was like midterms or something. And my friend was like, I've never had coffee before. Let's try it. And we did. And it led to this thing this tradition that we called cafecito y chisme.
Mm.
And so every time something went down or we had to do homework, cafecito y chisme, cafecito y chisme. And so we did this basically almost every other day. It wasn't like, infrequent. And it's just kind of something that inspired me to think of coffee shops as that space of combining cafecito y chisme with the arts.
Mm.
And so it kind of just like developed over my entire life. But I would say like about 8 years ago was when I decided that this was going to be something that I was going to make happen, regardless of anything.
And through your journey, what have been some moments of success or accomplishments that you've encountered?
Sorry, could you repeat that again?
Through your journey, what have been some moments of success or accomplishments that you have encountered?
Oh my gosh. I mean, like, it is overwhelming to think of the successes because I think oftentimes I focus on the failures, but I mean, looking at even this year, like I quit my full-time job to pursue this full-time. I'm in my studio right now. I'm in a shop. I'm looking to expand further, mobile coffee bar. There are opportunities like this that I'm doing as well. Um, Seeing how my website has like come together. What are like other things like even thinking of scholarships that I've won because this is my idea. So for example, I worked with Kimchi Creative recently to really make my brand cohesive and work on developing the image that I have in my head in words as well. The other one, which I don't think I'm supposed to announce yet, so I'm just going to keep that to myself. But if you follow me on Instagram, you'll know.
And so now, where have been some moments of growth or moments where you really learned a lot about owning a business and going through your journey?
Those are endless, and I know I'm always going to be encountering them, but there are little things like for example, like when before I decided to open this store, I was convinced that I was like 100% ready. I was like, you know what? I laid the groundwork.
Mhm.
I have all this stuff. Like, I can barely fit in my own room because of how much stuff I have. And I went into it not knowing what to expect, like what my budget would be, or like even like the little expenses like the mop. How much does a mop cost? How much does light cost?
Mm.
Just kind of learning toilet paper, like learning those little things like, okay, parking, is there like anything else that I need to learn about? Because now every cent matters versus before when I was a full-time employee and I was doing the business, I always had something to fall back on. Now that I'm on my own 2 feet, I'm like, oh no, we cannot function like that anymore. So this year again has been like one of the biggest learning curves for me because it's beyond just creating, artwork and doing accounting. It's beyond just going to events and selling. It's learning about SEO and like newsletters and how do you remain relevant to your consumers. How do you get loans? Like how do those little things that, well, they're not little, but like the big things that I wouldn't necessarily think about if I never got the shop. So my savings took a giant dip, but like climbing back out of it has been, like with every failure, there's always like learning to be done, and there's success at the end of the road. So I could keep going on that.
Yeah. So I just want to know, like, how do you manage, work-life balance? With that being said.
Ooh, that one's, I mean, like, I'm still trying to figure it out just because I mean, when it's your passion,
Mhm.
it's kind of hard to separate your work and your home life. And something that I have been attempting to implement, not fully, is giving myself a schedule and saying like at 8 p.m. we're done. Like we're not doing anymore. We're going home because it's not beneficial to you because you're probably not going to be productive at that point either way.
Mhm.
It's like you have to leave despite it being your passion. It's still a job at the end of the day. So for me, it's knowing when to stop and when to quit. So usually I can tell with myself of knowing that like I'm tired. I've stared at this computer for 10 minutes. I need to go.
Yeah. Love it, love it. And so now, like, what advice do you have for young Latina entrepreneurs who are really just trying to get in right now?
I mean, for everybody, I think this is even like for people who have been in business for a while and just feel like maybe it's not for them, is just keep going. There will always be failures. Like, get real comfortable with encountering failures and knowing that, it's a learning experience of things to do better next time. In the same right, also be kind to yourself, because you're not going to be perfect. And every time you reach this level of perfection that you thought you wanted 5 years ago,
Mhm.
there's going to be more that you want for yourself. So just keep going, like, get comfortable with failure, celebrate those successes, and be kind to yourself.
And so part of this company is really a communal. And so what are your thoughts about cooperative economics?
I say that everybody should be implementing them into their business whenever and wherever they can. It goes down to like, who are you getting your products from, to who you are hiring to. Um, Something that I haven't done on my website, but something that I'm very adamant about is hiring women of color. Um, because for us and being in creative spaces, they don't really exist. It's a very male dominated industry for both art and music and coffee roasting. And so for me, it's beyond just hiring women of color. It's also educating on business, or educating or trying to uplift them through whatever they're trying to achieve. If it's just a side gig for the next year, so be it. So for me, it's imperative that we like implement this into our business practices, because part of being able to support our own community is financially backing it.
And so like with that, where do you see your business in 5 years?
Oh, in 5 years, I want a whole roastery. I want 3 stores. um, I mean, like right now, I work alone, and it's because I'm essentially relaying down the groundwork again. But I'm already looking at mobile coffee bars um, to spread out around the city and hire people to be in charge of those. So in 5 years, my hopes is to at least have another store in the city, because I'm in the border of Chicago right now, in the suburbs. But I was born and raised in the city. I want something that where we can be present, and people know who we are and what we do, and hopefully just keep growing from there and keep financially backing the communities that I serve.
Would you mind just elaborating what are exactly are mobile coffee shops?
Sorry, what was that?
Would you mind elaborating what exactly are mobile coffee shops?
Yeah, so I mean, if y'all seen the paleteros, that's what I want, but in coffee. Like, I would love if somebody walked around like with coffee at all times, like at, because it's always a pleasant surprise. So, mobile coffee shops can look like anything. They could look like food trucks, but coffee trucks.
Yeah.
So, you just pop up to this park, and, you sell your coffee, or they can look like literally like those cards. They can get as high tech as like these electric bikes that have like all these devices, and that's what I'm looking at. Um, and you can again drive or bike around and see if anybody buys coffee, or you can sign up to do events like vending events or art shows where people buy coffee from you. Another example would be like sometimes people hire for their weddings like a coffee bar in the morning, or there's like other options of doing uh, corporate work for corporate events. So it's essentially just like a mobile coffee shop that you can take anywhere or somebody can rent it out. Um, but they're really expensive.
Yeah. What is your favorite coffee? Like, what's your favorite type of coffee?
Oh, we're like so I have different blends. Like with my coffee, my main coffee blend that I have right now is called Amor Eterno for obvious reasons. But it is Java, Ethiopian, and Mexican bean. So I don't have the licensing yet to directly work with farmers in other parts of the country. So I actually work with a local coffee shop here where I rent their roaster, and they have their importing license, and they do fair trade with all the farmers in different parts of the world. And so I just get the coffee from them, but my goal is to work directly with different people around the world and different farmers to ensure that my coffee is ethically sourced and that there is no abuse happening. The coffee industry is, I mean, food industry, let me correct myself, really is terrible to people outside of, I mean, even in the US, it's just awful conditions for people. And so something that I definitely want to make sure, and it goes back to that cooperative economics thing, is making sure that what's happening, not in front of your face, like you never know what's happening. And you have to be able to visit those coffee farms or whatever it is. Like you have like to see that is anybody being underpaid, or is there any like child labor happening? So yeah.
Now, next, I'd like to speak about have you speak about the art exhibits that you host and all these events that you host when you're just like sharing a bit about that.
Yeah, I know. I do everything under the sun. So there's like there's like layers upon layers of it. But the idea behind the events that I throw is that it's like a mobile coffee shop. It's a pop-up coffee shop. Yes, there are art, and usually like I have a taquera or like a taquero outside. Um, and because of the layout of my space, or like just some food vendor that
Mhm.
is here present so people can buy coffee and food and then go look around at other artisans. And so I host these events at my shop, usually every other month because it takes a lot of work, and I want to ensure that every single one of my vendors leaves happy and their pockets full. So I basically manage the entire event. I reach out to local artists, local food makers, and put together this just beautiful little community event of art, music, and food and coffee. It's specifically to highlight, you know, the ofrendas and like where the ofrendas come from. I have a guest speaker for that that is taking us on a journey on talking about essentially the indigenous practices of Day of the Dead and where this practice came from prior to the colonization. So, I try to incorporate different types of um, guest speakers, musicians, or whoever they may be, poets, to not only just enjoy our world and the beauty and art, but to also educate.
So thank you all so much. We have the last thing is like your últimas palabras. What is like your 1 minute commercial? Share about your business. Anything you want to share out, please do.
Well, you can always find me at anything that says Brewja Co, BREWJACO. That is Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, even my website is www.brewja.co. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I have coffee, I have art, I have a cool website, and yeah.
Thank you, Esperanza, for sharing with us and joining us today. For everyone at home, again, make sure you follow at Brewja Co and check her website on brewja.co. That is BREWJA.co. Also, make sure you follow us on social media at Latin_entertainment and check us out on all our platforms from Anchor, Spotify, Apple Music, and YouTube. And get ready for our next week's episode. Thank you for joining us, and until next time, support Latine businesses.